How did a baseball team made up of losers and drunks rise from last place to winning the World Series in half a season? Kent State University Press presents Deadbeats, Dead Balls, and the 1914 Boston Braves by Martin H. Bush. In this conversation that you're about to hear, the author sat down with fellow baseball historian Saul Gittleman to dive into the unforgettable story of the Braves and their meteoric rise through the 1914 season. As Gittleman said about the book,
I've never read a book that had captured the spirit of the moment as clearly and as raucously as this book did. You've written the definitive book about a moment in American baseball history. And I've read a lot of baseball books. The atmosphere that you created in the book was so authentic.
The Boston Braves, who would eventually become the present-day Atlanta Braves, were a bunch of losers and alcohol-soaked whiskey swiggers, buried in last place as late as mid-July of 1914. This rough gang was led by their bullying, superstitious manager, George Stallings, and assisted by Johnny Evers, a nasty, egotistical captain who was despised by opponents and umpires alike. And yet, despite the odds, this gang of misfits' rise to glory would become one of the greatest comeback stories in baseball history.
And I'm Martin Bush, and my book is Deadbeats, Dead Balls, and the 1914 Boston Braves. And it's about the greatest comeback in baseball history. But back in 1937, in the Depression, my father and mother didn't have any money to speak of, and we would go to Albany. And my mother would window shop with my daughter, well, not my daughter, my sister on South Pearl, and my father and I would go on North Pearl. And one day he said, "Come on, I want to introduce you to somebody." And so we entered this sporting goods store. It was brightly lighted, just filled with everything. No one there except one man. My father took me up to him, and he was red-faced, obviously a drinker. I didn't know that then. He said, "Marty, I want you to introduce you to Johnny Evers. He was an all-star." And, I remember, I can just visualize it now. And when we walked out, and Johnny was nice. He mussed my hair, and he was really pleasant. He concentrated on me, now my father. We got out, and I looked at my father and said, that old guy was an all-star? So I really had the privilege of meeting Johnny Evers.
People like Stallings, Evers, they were pathological, they were aggressive, they were nasty, and they would win at all costs. And some of them were so competitively pathological, like Evers. He would kill you for a base. That team represented everything that baseball was in 1914. And I've never read a book that had captured the spirit of the moment as clearly and as raucously as this book did. You got into white, bigoted, noisy, gambling, alcohol, baseball of 1914, the way it was. It was a dramatic picture of what America was like. The gambling, the drinking, the cursing, Ban Johnson, really tough, nasty people who would do anything to win a game. Fans in the outfield with waving money at these guys. Drop a ball. And gambling was pervasive. It was everything. All they wanted you to do was throw the game.
Joe Jackson should be in the Hall of Fame. Think about it. The man refused $1 million to stay with his team. Would a man like that throw a baseball game? I don't think so.
The thing that made it mostly different from today. Today's owners are all hedge fund billionaires. They spend their money, $200, $300, $400 billion, $1 billion, as chump change. These 16 owners, they were in it for a living. This was their major source of income, and they watched the players like hawks.
Oh, yes, and took advantage of them.
These are people who made their daily living from a bunch of drunken ball players who were beating up a little bit. So they watched the players. They also had a legal control of it was slavery. It was indentured servitude. The Supreme Court had given them the exemption from the antitrust laws, and if you didn't sign your contract, you didn't play.
Well, here, so I have to add to this. Gaffney, who owned the Braves, was really a good owner. And he made his money in Tammany Hall. He was a controversial person because he apparently was getting a lot of graft and that sort of thing. But he, as a boy, he always wanted to own a baseball team. It was something that he dreamed about. And so he made a move to buy a baseball team. He tried to buy the Brooklyn Club and lost a lot of money and was unsuccessful. And he talked to John McGraw, and John McGraw told him how to do it. And so he had the money. He and a bunch of Tammany money men bought the Braves, and they had the money to make them a good team. And he proved to be a wonderful owner. Late in the season, I think in June, when they were really still way down, they were something like $171 million in debt or something. It was a fantastic amount. And he was going to throw it all in, and he was finished with it. And George Stallings said, no, our luck has been so bad. It's bound to change. Stick with me. And Stallings was right. And Gaffney ended up making a lot of money when he sold the team.
So it was a unique team. There was nothing like it before and nothing quite like it afterwards. They went downhill after that very quickly, but it was a moment in time when the right people were at the right place for one season, for half a season. That's all it was. It was a half a season, but they made it happen, and it would never happen again.
Bad weather in Boston really hurt them. And they started out, they were something like 4-18. A lot of them were sick because of the rain and that sort of thing. And then they were something like 18-40. And Stallings kept saying, but we're a good team. We're going to finish in the first division. Nobody believed him. But they came together gradually. And in June, I think they had a 16-13 record. And then in July, they started to catch fire. And I may not be totally exact on this, but from about July 7th, for about a month or a month and a half, they had a record of something like 67-19. And they caught up to the Giants, and they had to play the Giants in the Polo Grounds. Everybody said the Giants are the best team around. The Braves have made their move. They'll fall apart. And the Braves swept them. And at that point, everybody said, uh-oh, these guys are for real. And then they went on and they won by about 10 games or 11 games. And then the Philadelphia Athletics were acknowledged as the most powerful team ever put together in baseball, dynasty, and they swept them 4 games in a row in the World Series. An umpire who had been around for years, Bill Clem, after he retired from the field, he'd been there for something like 70 years. He said it was the most spirited team he ever saw in all of his years in baseball. They just had a winning spirit. And I like to think, if you watch baseball today, Bobby Witt, for example, that Rabbit Moranville was something like Bobby Witt. And it's difficult to say who would be better. Rabbit was very quick and would catch baseballs way out in the outfield. And he'd make plays that people would not believe could be possible. And the guy was amazing. And he was a drunk. He came to work drunk half the time.
Consider him physically. He's a big guy. You know, these are Americans today. Nutrition, penicillin. It's a different world from 1914. Just a different world and different kinds of people. The dead ball era will always be a certain kind of number that you have to look at. I mean, and how they held a bat, what the bats looked like, what the equipment was like, the infields. Who the hell took care of carpeting the infield the way they do now. I mean, in 1920, a baseball player was killed by a pitched ball. And then after that, the players said, or the owner said, we cannot have this repeated. Get new balls, keep the ball clean, keep the ball white. Until then, the ball was black by the end of the game. I mean, they use 1 or 2 or 3 balls in a game. Now they throw a ball out every little bruise, you know? And so the first guy that got killed, and Babe Ruth, he did start with a golf swing, turning his hips and getting into the ball the way it used to be a game of just choke up, punch the ball wherever you could. Ruth did revolutionize hitting. He became a golf swing. And when you get your hips into a ball, you can drive it. He was able to drive a ball and change the game. So, and they found out the fans loved the home run. They loved the bigger game, and baseball changed from the dead ball era of the 1914 Braves to the live ball era of Babe Ruth and Stan Musial and Williams, and now what you got with smaller ballparks, increasingly smaller, because the fans love home runs.
People don't realize the ballparks were huge.
Enormous.
Shibe Park, I think, had something like 515 feet to center field.
So did Fenway. So now they consider it a bandbox, but it was 550 feet to center field.
The ballparks, the ball, even the pitching mound.
They were pitching from the top of Mount Rushmore. The mounds are huge. You can tilt the game any way you want. And the owners control the ball. They control the manufacture. They can tighten the ball. They can loosen the ball. They can give you and create a different environment. You've written the definitive book about a moment in American baseball history. All white, you know, the black people were invisible in this book. They weren't there. Nobody, especially Boston, forget it. And that was the way it was, you know. And this is a throwback in many ways to an age that Americans maybe romanticize, but you romanticize nothing. And it comes through, I thought, quite deliberately and quite clearly in the book. The language, the attitudes. How did you get all of those newspaper sources? You did such research for this book. I couldn't believe it. It was absolutely breathtaking, the number of newspapers you read.
You request them at the New York Public Library in the microfilm room. You can get any newspaper in the country free. And what I soon learned is that if you just got the Boston papers, they traveled with the team and they were friends of the players, so they wouldn't say anything bad about the players. But if they were playing Pittsburgh, for example, the freezing baseballs, the Pittsburgh papers would be full of them. So what I decided to do, I'm a very thorough researcher, I just spent 10 years in newspapers. So many early baseball books were based on one source. Most libraries, you know, whether you went to whatever school you went to, and if you went to look at a microfilm, you'd get the New York Times. The New York Times was not the best sports paper in New York. There were many others. New York had 23 newspapers. And so if you used only one source, your description of the games was not good, was not honest. I thought, if I'm going to write a book, I want to write one that has substance.
The atmosphere that you created in the book was so authentic. It's unprecedented in the history of American baseball writing. And I've read a lot of baseball books. Nobody I have ever encountered has sourced his bibliography with the number of newspapers that Martin used.
Deadbeats, Deadballs, and the 1914 Boston Braves by Martin H. Bush is available now from Kent State University Press. Saul Gittleman is the author of several books, including Reynolds, Rashi, and Lopate, New York's Big Three, and the Great Yankee Dynasty of 1949 to 1953. This conversation has been presented by Kent State University Press and Vesto Audio. Thank you for listening.